Put your red shirt on and a brown coat too. Everybody's joining the crew. We got just one drink that we rule them all. Hope you'd remember your towels. Get your Ulu fingers and your needler guns. A sonic screwdriver or a sword +1. Use Valerian steel if it will get you to come. To the pit tank. To the pit tank. The Rocky Mountain pit tank.
Hi, I'm Guy. Uh-oh, Troy's muted.
Uh-oh.
Oh, your mom is muted. Hi, I'm Troy.
And this is Geek Tank.
Your Nat 20, in this case, a Natural 1 side podcast.
We're here this week to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, the old classic game, and plausibly the new updates that are not so classic because they're not classic yet, or something. But our guest today is the mighty Bakudan.
Yay. So we're not talking about actual Dungeons and actual Dragons. We're talking about the game.
Oh, come on. Dungeons don't exist in real life. Jeez.
Those
right.
notes.
Yep.
I thought we were talking about actual Dungeons. And
Not with that attitude.
That'd be very
do you remember the cartoon?
I remember the cartoon.
Oh,
There was only one season of it, which was not enough. Somebody did a fan animated short animation continuing the adventures of the Dungeons and Dragons kids.
Fun.
Wow.
It was pretty cool.
When it came out, they hit the toy market pretty big too. But the toys they released were not posable. They were just PVC pieces, like little PVC statues. But I still had a few of them.
That's
They
awesome.
were the minis.
Yep.
They were mini-sized.
They were biggies.
Bigatures.
Bigatures.
Yep.
I remember it was, if they would have timed it better, like now with if they would have had a system like 5e and released it, a cartoon, 5e is great for kids. The original Dungeons and Dragons, a bit complex for a kid.
Oh,
Yeah,
Lord.
That's the thing is, yeah.
So I've got way ahead of myself. It's when I think of Dungeons and Dragons, I always think about the cartoon. So Dungeons and Dragons
Thaco.
Thaco. We'll get to Thaco.
Years of therapy down the drain.
Mm-hmm.
He was my favorite Warner Brothers brother. So, but yeah, invented by Gary Gygax, and in 1971, 1971 he made Chainmail, which was like the precursor to Dungeons and Dragons.
And Dave Arneson. He does not get credit.
And looks like Jeff Peron was part of Chainmail. I don't know about Arneson is the one who went in for Dungeons and Dragons. The drafts were in 73. I'm trying to see when they actually released it. First published in 74. So that version of Dungeons and Dragons, I think I have a couple of them downstairs. It was I believe a 3-book set, and they were very tiny. They were like maybe like that big. But when I was old enough to get into Dungeons and Dragons, it was the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
Right, we were at AD&D.
Which we knew we had that as kids, but there was no medicine for us.
Right.
So, and then after AD&D, I believe is what they had 3.0. Is that what they called it? Or
After AD&D, there was second edition.
Second
Yeah, I was
edition.
gonna say the second.
Yep. The second edition, which was slightly improved. It was not quite as clunky, but it was still not. It was still not the masterpiece that eventually 3.5 became.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the thing is that it was the trendsetter. So it set the pace. So it was, I always find that people are often unfair with it. Oh man, yeah, no, 2.0, that was brutal. It was a horrible game. No, it wasn't. It was totally the only one out there.
Yeah, that's part of it. Is that the whole industry has evolved so much since then. Dungeons and Dragons had its roots in wargaming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So,
Lancaster. Chris is saying that he started with.
Oh, I'm not seeing
D&D.
comments. You guys are
Oh,
It's
yeah,
not
we're,
showing
we're,
up.
we're special.
Comments. There's the comments. Okay. Original D&D. So, bleh. AD&D and D&D Second Edition started out from wargaming. That was what Gary Gygax was a wargamer, and so it had that level of complexity, and that I tend to think of it like cricket. You know, there's just ridiculous rules that not everybody gets and understood, but God damn it, this is how we've always done it.
Right.
So that's what they stuck with for the longest time, and then. After a certain point, after a good long run of second edition there, they moved to third in 1999, I think?
2000.
2000, yeah. And it was kind of a revolution, especially because they did the whole open game license thing, which really helped to propel them into the mainstream of role-playing games. The open game license, Guy, you got a confused look on your face there.
No.
Okay.
I'm confused.
That's just
reading
Guy.
everything's comments. I always look like this.
Yeah. Okay.
Ugly.
Guys always just ugly. Oh,
What?
that's terrible.
Oh.
So cruel. Excuse me. So
We derailed. Damn.
you
completely.
derailed me. It's easy enough to do. So with third edition, not only did you have an extremely stable, solid set of rules designed specifically to offset and control the rules lawyers, the people that are gonna find a loophole and bend it and break it. If you take those three core books, the Player's Handbook, the Monster Manual, and the GM's Guide from third edition, which I still have on my shelf, they make a triangle, and then it is an incredibly stable triangle. It's a very rock solid system. They made some improvements in 3.5, which came out a little bit later, which improved the stability. There was still some things in there that was like, why do I have a use rope skill? Why can't I just use the rope? You know?
I don't
but,
have the skill. Oh God.
Yeah. And then, of course, and I'm looking at my collection over here, they came out with 400,000 source books.
Right.
And part of the reason why they came out with 400,000 source books was they had the open game license, which basically took the core framework of D&D, of the D&D system, the D20 system is what they called it, and made it free for anyone to use. They said these are the basic rules. These are some sample monsters. Any of the monsters that came out of mythology or folk tales were free to use. Any monsters that were specific to D&D, like the Beholder or the Tarrasque or similar creatures, those were still copyrighted and you couldn't use those. But dragons, dragons are in every culture, just like Troy was talking about. So the rules for dragons were completely open source. So you started to see people that had these ideas. Well, gosh, I want to make a Sailor Moon RPG, but I don't know what the system to use. Oh, I'll just use D20. And so you start seeing, I've seen so many anime RPGs, Trigun, Bubblegum Crisis, Sailor Moon, Dragon Ball Z, tons and tons of these games put out under that D20 license. And by doing so, maybe fantasy isn't your thing, but holy cow, Trigun, I want to play a Trigun role-playing game. I want to play a Firefly role-playing game. People jumped on that, and then it's a system that they're familiar with. And so it was, at the time, people were like, what? Well, you're just giving the system away? What's the deal? And now you can look back on it and go, my God, it's, making it open source like that, make it accessible to every gamer in every category. And so people got to be so familiar with it. Exactly. And so they've continued to do that. It's very smart of them. Because it's turned out to be such a great business plan that while they might not have made money directly, they certainly kept themselves relevant and kept themselves in the market at a time when people were splitting off and people were wanting to do different things. Shadowrun was on the market, completely different system. Earthdawn, completely different system. Cyberpunk 2020, I've run all these games over the years. all totally different. But then I would sit down and look at my D20 books and go, well, how can I convert this to D20? And in most cases it would work. In some cases it would not. But having this tremendous flexibility and this system that everybody already knew how to use made a huge difference and has ultimately kept D&D relevant over the next 20 years.
I have a Task Force Games version of a D20. No, it's ADB. Amarillo Design Bureau did a D20 version of Prime Directive.
Yeah.
Using their Starfleet Battles / Star Trek, which was the only way to play Star Trek for a while there, was through that, because the other licenses were, CBS was doing no, you can't have any licenses. No.
Yeah,
it's
kind of silly.
From Last Unicorn, and they took the license back from Last Unicorn. They took it back from FASA, and and all that stuff just kind of dried up the market. So if you wanted to play, before Decipher got a hold of it, if you wanted to play, that was the way to go. It's just with D20.
I was going to ask you, didn't GURPS pick up Star Trek?
They did.
It picked up Prime Directive. Same thing. So
Okay,
it picked up the Prime Directive book is the Starfleet Battles universe.
Ah, okay.
Which is cool. It works just fine. I mean,
Yeah.
But Starfleet
the-
Battles is so old now that it's got its own lore and its own universe that it's doing too. So, which I like a whole lot because I've been playing since the 80s.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know GURPS is Troy's go-to role-playing system that he loves, and I think I might be at least partially responsible for that.
Actually, I started on GURPS a long time ago.
Did you?
That.
Okay.
But I mean, you certainly kept the ball rolling.
Yeah, and I think you and I met back in the 90s when Alex invited you over for character making session.
Mhm.
And I remember because you had the best concept. I told people, I said, we're going to make a supernatural investigators game, and you can have a special power, like a psychic power or a magic power, but it cannot be combat related. It has to be non-combat power. And so everybody else was like, well, my power makes a sword. I'm like, no, you're not getting it. But you were the one who was like, okay, I'm a changeling. I can change into anything I want. I was like, he gets it. Somebody gets it. Okay. All right. We can go now. So that game never got off the ground, but that was how I remember meeting you.
I remember
That would have been fun.
another game that you were putting together that never got off the ground is you wanted people to come up with horror creatures similar to like Jason and Freddy. And I was like, I think that was you that was doing
Maybe?
that. Maybe.
I've had so many ideas.
It never happened. No, we never got together in person. But I was trying to figure out a way to make the non-entity from Final Destination series into some kind of playable character. So I would have to set up all these Rube Goldberg traps for people to trigger to eventually cause some ceiling fan to fall on someone and kill them. But yeah, the thing I loved about GURPS is I found it super versatile to where no matter what character you came up with, I could recreate it in GURPS. It's just a matter of if it's a 100-point normal human to a 500,000-point Dragon Ball Z character.
500,000 points.
500,000 points. That's probably
That's
where
about
the
right.
show is about now. Yeah.
Mhm.
Dragon Ball Super. It's just gotten. I love Dragon Ball, but god damn.
Well, I remember you being a Dragon Ball fan back in the day.
Oh yeah.
What do you mean
I
back in the
And
day?
I'm like,
Back in the
and I'm
day,
like, I don't know.
I had
if
Dragon
you're-
Ball diapers back in the.
Yeah, exactly. It was just amazing.
No,
They
I
make
picked
a
up
special-
Dragon Ball from a friend of a friend in 1989, and we were walking in we found Honya, the Japanese bookstore, and we wandered through there and we're looking at everything, and one of the guys was like, "Oh, Dragon Ball," and I was like, "What's a Dragon Ball?" And I started reading through it, and then I was lost. That was it. From there on, I still have my little shrine here in my
Dragon Ball.
my shrine to Dragon Ball. Let's see if I can get it on the camera. Nope, it's blocked by my work monitors. But yeah, I have a little shrine going here. So yeah, no, that was great stuff.
I'm going
And
to bring it back around to mentioning great ideas that they're doing. If you go to dnd.wizards.com, you can actually access the basic rules for free.
Mhm.
So they're like, "Hey, here's the rules. Come play for free, and then buy all the stuff."
Right. Right. Yeah, and it's brilliant.
Yeah, that worked really well. I mean, it's definitely something that has gone in its favor.
Their website is great too because they have character building programs in there, so it helps you do all the math and helps you know where you're supposed to do stuff. I'm really impressed with where they're at now. I missed the whole 4th edition. Not that I was never really huge into Dungeons and Dragons in that way, but I remember hearing constantly from people about how 4th edition was just horrible and how they tried to tie it into the video game Diablo, which I love.
No,
that wasn't 4th.
They tried to tie it into World of Warcraft.
Oh,
They try to tie it in.
so I've got a set
Yeah.
of miniatures from Diablo that they released, the Barbarian and all
the
of them.
Diablo, yes, that release was from D&D 3.5.
Ah,
I remember seeing the box, and it said Diablo, but no computer required. And you're like, and then I look closer, and I'm like, oh, it's D&D, sweet. So yeah, keep that box. It's probably worth something,
oh, yeah.
like everything else in your house.
I don't know. I found some stuff that's not worth anything, and then I find stuff that I look up and I'm like, this can't possibly be worth this much money. But it looks like they're running the sell again. I just looked it up. I just got this like urge to try to get my kids into Dungeons and Dragons because my older son Nick was actually part of a D&D club in school, and they played every Thursdays. And since they haven't been back together and none of them have put together anything online, I was like, well, my youngest have turned 11. It might be fun to do a D&D role-playing game because it's 4 players, which is the number of players I like to run. Five is also good, but when you get to 6, that's getting to be too many.
I knew a guy once who ran a really big game with a whole lot of people in it.
He's an idiot.
How big was that
We didn't
game?
even
Troy?
like
It
him.
was like 30 people or
I
something.
love count.
It was ridiculous, but it was fun while it lasted.
In
And
any
the
case,
X versus tie part was awesome.
the
The
Target,
expert style.
yes, Target, it has the basic starter set on sale for, it's normally $20. It's $12.50. And when I got it, I think it was like $10 because they were having a special half off deal. And so I grabbed that, and I grabbed the Essentials, which is also normally like a $20 thing, and they had that marked down to almost $10, and it's like $11 now. But well, that's a different thing. Any case, with Black Friday coming up, it's going to drop, and one of the main reasons I wanted to get the sets was I've rarely ever ran a game as written. I'll usually skim through the storyline, grab the few pieces I want, and then run with that on my own. And like, it'd be interesting, I thought, to just run it scene for scene as written with very little improvisation, and try to keep it to a minimum, unless if the players went that direction and they forced me to do it.
Right.
And so I grabbed those, and they each come with the starter comes with 1 set of D&D dice. The Essentials one comes with like 1.5 sets. And so normally dice you're spending $5 to $10 on anyway. So I figured it'd be fun, and I've been impressed with it. It comes with starter set comes with a nice little map, and it comes with pre-built characters, which I was happy with my kids and wife because they agreed with me. The fun of the game is making your own character. So luckily I had the Essentials book, and that walked me through that.
There's another starter set that might be a little harder to find, but it came out a couple of years ago during the intense popularity of Stranger Things.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
And there's that one. I especially got it because it comes with the Demogorgon.
Demogorgon, yeah.
Not only is there a Demogorgon, there's a painted Demogorgon, but there's also an unpainted one.
Oh,
And this box, once again, has just the starter rules in it, just enough to get you interested, and then.
does it come with both Demogorgs, or is there 2 different versions of the set?
No, they're both exactly the same. Like I said, one is painted and one's not.
That's what I mean. But the box only comes with one, or does the box come with both versions?
It comes with both versions.
Oh, cool.
Here, let me crack it open real quick.
Well, now you're going to devalue it.
I've already devalued it. I've been playing with it.
Oh, okay.
Why have toys? You don't play with them. But it comes with a set of
That's
dice.
what
It
my
comes
mom
with
always told me,
basic.
too.
Your
Hello.
mom.
your mom. Comes with a set of dice.
Yeah.
Comes with a pair of Demogorgons. There you can see one painted, one not. And then cool stuff because it's Stranger Things themed. There's a whole book in here, supposedly handwritten by Will Byers. They're the GM on Stranger Things. Little cool things like that. But yeah, I stumbled across this at not a Target, but someplace similar, someplace where I did not expect to see it, and immediately
Brent's
snapped
saying
it
he
up.
saw that set at Barnes and Noble.
Ah, that might be where it was. Yeah, it was someplace that I think
You
of as
wouldn't
being
expect.
mundane, and was surprised to see this set. But it was also right around season 1 or season 2 for Stranger Things, so it's been out for a while.
Right. I remember seeing it at Target as well. I don't know if it's
Yeah.
still there or not. But yeah, those dice look exactly like the same dice in the other starter set, so it's probably
sure.
almost identical.
Yeah,
Um,
General Dice. I got it, like I said, for the Demogorgon.
Yep. The original miniatures or that they used for the TV show are very hard to come by now because everybody wants them because of the TV show.
Hmm.
And some of them came in sets. So unless if you can find the set, you have to track down that miniature by name. I ended up going on a hunt for them because I like to browse pictures of painted miniatures, and somebody made a little Stranger Things display with all the original figures painted and then the Demogorgon.
That's
And I
awesome.
was like, that looks cool. I wonder how much it would cost to recreate that. And it's a little expensive, but the problem is more the time you would have to spend trying to find the best deals on those miniatures.
Well, and in this modern day and age with miniatures, 3D printing is the way to go.
Yeah.
HeroForge.com. I have printed and bought several miniatures from them. They're a little expensive, but they're also a local Colorado company, and they print in varying quality.
I didn't know that they were.
I didn't know they were local.
They're up north. They're not in Denver, but they're in North Colorado. One of my friends, one of the guys that's the best miniature painter I've ever known, and the guy who introduced me to Dungeons and Dragons when I was 7. He told me that they're up north. So if you like fooling around with miniatures, Troy, go on their site. You can get
I've been there. I like building miniatures.
you
on
can
there.
build the miniature right out. You can save it. Make yourself an account. It's free. Save it right there, and then once you're ready, you can pay for it, or you can purchase the STL file yourself and have yourself or a friend print it up for you.
Right.
So
I know somebody who has a 3D printer.
I know multiple people who have them. So yeah.
Well, yeah, but I'm actually referring to Brent, who's over there in the.
Oh, Brent. Yes. Hey, Brent.
He actually recently been.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards getting one just because all of the STL file, the algorithm on Facebook is perfect because I keep getting hit with all the ads for buy our STL files, and they'll be beautiful looking miniatures, and I'm like,
Yeah, I keep. I now am actually. I've got a couple of patron people things that I follow now who do beautiful miniatures, but like. They do them the way that I kind of think are cool. Like the one that really got me was this last one. She put out this woman in armor, but the armor actually is not like boobs.
it's
It's actually like armor, like it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I need that mini because every time I play, it's I always end up having to pick minis with big boobs, and I'm like, this is not really me.
Yeah, it gets really old.
It does get old, and it's like. But as someone who always plays female characters, I'm always having to buy minis, and I'm like, man. So I was like, oh, now I've got the STL files for these, and she's got various variants. So there's like an archer version, there's a sword version, a pike version. I've just got like all of these now. Since I'm following her on Patreon, I just download them when she releases them.
It's definitely getting better. Like the major brand Reaper has a line of miniatures, and Wizards, WizKids, Wizards of the Coast have their own line of miniatures too that they make modeled after, of course, all the D&D classes, and they've gotten really good about not going for the cheesecake factor. and
Yes.
actually making believable characters. So
Mhm.
Right.
That's and that's a good point. One of the other things that third edition and 3.5 did, and I can tell you because I own all the books, there's a lot of art in those books, and I can think of perhaps one instance in 60 some books that was sort of cheesecakey, but the rest of it is completely normal. There's depictions of males and females in completely normal garb, completely normal gear. Nobody posing with their butt sticking out or anything, or nobody looking down the shirt as she leans over. None of that. It's all just completely normal artwork. And for the early 2000s, where that sort of thing was still a problem, it's noticeable. It's nice to see, that
Yeah.
there's none of this cheesecake going on.
It's really funny. That's one of those aspects of this culture that I have always felt was a feedback loop problem. Back in the 80s, the excuse was, well, nobody wants anything but cheesecake. And it's like, I didn't want cheesecake even when I was a teenage boy. That was still just, it wasn't my style. It wasn't my speed. And it irritated me. It really bothered me. And it took a long time. And it was the introduction of making it okay for women to be in the games with us. We had a cultural lockout for them for a while.
Mhm.
And once you opened it up, gosh, every game I play now is 50-50.
Mhm.
I mean, it's like all of our player groups are always 50-50 now that it's no longer taboo, to
Well,
have.
and I think more than that, I don't think it's a question of taboo now that it's been made into a space where women feel comfortable coming in.
There's
and
both
feel-
of those.
Yeah, and feel
There's
like
both.
they are going to be taken seriously, and they get to enjoy the game just the same as everybody else. And that's
Almost
hugely
like we're
important.
talking about agency somewhere along the line. It
Yeah,
seems
that's
like
right.
having
Agency is an important thing.
memories of us discussing agents.
yeah,
So,
And yes, Brent, I know I could just ask you, but right now it's COVID, so even if you printed them, we couldn't.
he could shoot him out of a potato gun.
There you go.
you could mail them to you. That's not that hard.
That's not fun.
Oh, well,
Why do
okay,
that?
yeah, sure. We're
When
going
you
for
could
fun.
use a potato gun, B-Dan,
You cut the potato in half, put the miniature in it,
inside it.
inside it.
Inside, safely ensconced
Yes.
in a potato mold that will protect it from all harm.
Yes.
You've thought this through, I can tell.
I have. That's
Well,
why.
the best part
That's
about
my
it is you get a
platform.
mini and French fries.
I would not want to eat the potato after it has made that trip. That would not be so good.
This is what you get when you come to this show. We never stay on topic.
That's never what's the topic? I don't
I
even
don't
know.
remember.
Do we
Me neither.
remember our topic?
Other things related to Dungeons and Dragons that come to mind is the whole craze in, was it 78 or right before the 80s? Of course, it was all the hardcore Christian groups were like, this is satanic and turning people into devil worshippers. And then Tom Hanks was cast in a movie called Monsters and Mazes, which was based off of the kid who went into the sewers to play Dungeons and Dragons for real.
Mm.
And you can, I believe, let me double check the name of that, but I believe you can look up scenes of that on YouTube. And it's some of the worst acting from a great actor that you would ever see.
Oh dear.
Um,
1982.
I'm going to real quickly take a break to remind everybody that our Geek Tank is sponsored by Kieran Games, Geekway Homes, Shiny Garden, and Your Mom. Okay, back to the
Good Lord.
Yeah, so Monsters and Mazes.
a trebuchet.
Yep.
Right, a trebuchet.
Because 82 would have been about the time that my brother was playing Traveler. Because he was
I
a lot
love
more into the science fiction aspect of games. He liked to run Traveler because he thought more about science fiction than he did medieval stuff. But he would play in the D&D games because it was easier to be a character in a game and not have to come up with the plots if that's not the way your mind works. But he is bringing me into the Traveler game a little bit because he had to. I was in the house, so with his friends.
You're drafted.
Yeah, it's like if you're babysitting me, that means I guess I get to roll dice. And that was I remember. Here you go. Get ready for this. My mom
Your mom.
was, of course, one of those who was freaked out about Dungeons and Dragons and wanted none of the stuff to be in the house whatsoever. So, and that's that combined with the Monsters and Mazes thing, because it became one of those. If you get into this, you'll go crazy and go into the sewers and die.
Well, and that was still going on I mean, I still remember Scott. We were just talking about Scott from the Brass.
Mhm.
And that was his wife did the same thing. He couldn't get into any of it because it was all satanic.
Right.
So, and that was 2014. I mean, that was just 6 years ago.
It was for kids, satanic for kids. So one, you're a Satanist if you're doing it, and two, you're immature.
Right.
So he had to live vicariously through your and my satanic immaturity.
Yeah. I actually pride myself on my satanic immaturity personally.
Yeah, I'm pretty immature when it comes to Satanism. I don't know much about it.
I gotta admit, it must involve kittens. I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of.
Well, they say, I figured if we really start getting into it, we'd learn it better and know more, because the devil's in the details.
That's true.
That's it. I'm out of here.
All right.
And that's how we got B-Dan to leave.
Finally. Thought he would never leave.
Right? Well,
I'm like a bad penny.
So I'm trying to remember D&D stories, because, like I said, I haven't played in a ton. The longest one I played in is, if you guys remember, Mikey and Darcy ran a game, and I want to say that was 3 or 3.5. Alex was in that, and what I did is, instead of having a character concept, I wrote all the stats randomly, and then I built my character based on the stats that I got.
right.
And
Where it lies.
And I ended up having a really stupid Minotaur, because he let me play a Minotaur, who used two-handed swords to dual fight. But he was, I loved playing a character that was really, really stupid and just didn't get it. It was just a fun twist on things. And Darcy played a fairy, of course.
Yeah.
And there was a thing where someone cast an illusion spell on us that a dragon was attacking us. There was no way I was going to disbelieve it, because my intelligence was crap. So I believed there was a dragon breathing fire on me, and it hurt. And the fairy was fine. So I'm like, oh, fairies are immune to fire. So I grabbed Darcy and was using her as a shield to run up and attack a dragon. And everyone else in the group, of course, made their row. So they just see me freaking out, running around with one of the characters as a shield. But all role-playing games, I think the gold that's in them is the stories that come out from the interaction with the players.
Oh yeah, Brent's commenting, never light a fart with a fireball and then roll a 1.
You probably should never anything with a fireball and roll a 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Many years ago, I ran a game with Alex and his brother Neil, and everybody started at level 1, but Alex's character was a swashbuckling adventurer, and so he had everybody convinced, including Neil's character, that he was much higher level than he really was. So mostly because he was very flamboyant, and of course, I am the greatest, I am the best, I am the legendary adventurer, blah blah blah. And so and he had the best ability to roll a nat 20 and shoot the Lizard King straight through the mouth and through the roof of his mouth and kill him in one shot. And Neil's character was like, holy cow, this guy must be like 15th level. He's incredible. He really is an amazing adventurer. And in reality, of course, he was no higher level than anybody else. It was just one of those perfect moments where everybody was like, he really is that good. Oh my God.
It's like in Willow. You are a great
Yes!
swordsman.
You are a great swordsman. Yes, that's exactly what it was.
I
I tried to play Mad Mardigan first time I played D&D. It did not go so well.
Wow.
But yeah.
Yeah, does anybody remember their first game of D&D? I mean, you were saying
Yes, I do.
Yours was like you were 7.
So, my parents,
Your parents.
were involved in a D&D game with an old friend of ours named Les Les works out at Black and Red nowadays, if you want to meet him. And
does great miniature work.
He's been painting miniatures since before all of us were alive.
He's the fastest miniature painter that I know of.
I know. He was, and I had my kid was involved in his little online miniature painting thing.
Right. Yeah. For those of you,
beautiful mini, but boy, he was like, "Slow down, help!"
For those of you listening, Les has been drafted by Black and Red, who probably volunteered, no less, to run these online Zoom meetings once a month that corresponds with the paint and take alongs. And he's a great miniature painter. The paint and take along sets are a great deal. They're like $20 and they come with all the paints you need and a miniature. Was it Wizards that's doing it?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think Wizards Coast is doing it. They're taking November and December off, so there is no take and paint for November and December, but I believe they're supposed to pick up again in January. So if you call Black and Red or go online and just message them on Facebook and say, "Hey, I'd like to reserve a kit," then they'll hold one for you. You go pick it up, and then on a Sunday closer to the end of that month, for about 3 hours, you just join in on the Zoom and you paint along with it. Mm-hmm. But yes, I'm promoting Les and Black and Red.
Absolutely, and they deserve it. But when I was about 7, my mother and father were in a role-playing game that was being run by Les. And so they would take me over to Les's apartment, sit me down in front of the Atari 2600, no joke, and say, "Play with this and don't bother us." And so eventually I played through all the Atari games and I was bored. So I went and poked my head in the back room to see what they were doing. And there was this great big map laid out and a bunch of people and these little miniatures. And I was like, what is this? What's going on here? So Les very, very generously made me a little elf character. And I remember rolling a die to listen at a door and see if there was a trap. And Les remembers my character dying. I don't remember it. He said he felt terrible because I sprung a trap and died in one hit. But I don't remember that happening. I just remember having a really good time. And of course being allowed to play along with the grown-ups.
Right.
So, but yeah, that was my first D&D game, age 7.
Wow. Nice.
So what about you, Troy? When was your first?
Well, first Dungeons and Dragons game's a little harder for me to pinpoint because there wasn't a lot of that going on.
But it seems like your brother was very much like the people I was hanging out with in junior high, because that's the same with me. My first game was a TSR game, but it was Star Frontiers, which is the space version of D&D.
Space Dungeons and Space Dragons.
Not Spelljammer?
But it was, but yeah, so that was actually my first experience in a role-playing game, period. I had never, so that I had a Dralosite, and that was cool, and he got killed by
shapeshifters, right? Or is that the bug?
No, I wouldn't play the bugs. No. It was the amoebas.
Yeah, the shapeshifter.
Yeah, the 6 foot tall amoebas. Yeah.
I had that game too. It was the box set. I remember
still trying to recoup that one. Yeah.
I think the D&D game I remember the clearest that would have been along the first would have been when I was a teenager at a one-shot at a convention, and they were pre-generated characters, and the only character left was a female werebear character. And being a teenager in the 80s, my first thing I had to say was, well, can't I just make this character a guy? Because there was the whole weird taboo of looking like that. And they're like, nope, it's got to be a female. And I'm like, well, I really want to play, so I'll do it. And my big thing is like, I don't know if I can get in the mindset correctly to play this, so I will play the character the best I can. And I just played the character normally because I didn't want to do any stereo type kind of stuff. And it was a fun character to play. One shots were a weird concept to me because even though I hadn't played D&D before that, I played role playing games, and the formula for a role playing game in my mind was it had to be multiple game sessions so you could have character growth. I remember once starting to get into a game. it was, and only sitting in for about a half hour because the one guy running it and the other guy was kind of co-running it, but also playing. They kept making points of bringing up all of this historical accuracy stuff of like, there wasn't parchment back in this time. It was made out of lamb skin and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, I'm not into this. Bye. It's like, if I wanted to take a history lesson, I'd sign up for a class at university.
Right. That's the thing. I mean, I know that I've got the same thing. The girls that the group that I was with in high school, the girls really liked D&D. And so even though myself and the other guy in the group, because it was mostly girls, which I had the weirdest high school career because like this is the 80s, but I had a bunch of girls who were into role playing. But the girls liked the D&D genre. They liked they wanted to go there more than the space stuff. And I was like, fine, I outvoted, but it's okay. And so we went for D&D 2 at that time. So this was high school. And then we moved to ICE, and that's where my love for ICE started because we moved to Middle Earth Role Playing, or MERPS. And so that was where we were. But I remember I started on 2.0 and THAC0, and I hated THAC0, and I still hate THAC0.
All right, let's talk about THAC0.
Yeah.
So
I
back in the day,
had to look it up.
You had to look it up. Back in the day, when Dungeons and Dragons has been based on wargaming, what they came up with to adjudicate combat was everybody had what was called a THAC0. That's an acronym to hit armor class 0. And your THAC0 could be a negative number. It was very rarely a positive number. And it modified the die roll by this much and then by how much they were close to armor class 0 and -4 to that. It was a mathematical
nightmare.
It was such an incredible chore to calculate whether or not you hit somebody. To the point, I mentioned my first game with Alex. I tried to play Mad Mardigan, and I felt like I got clubbed over the head with THAC0 because I had to figure it out because I was playing a fighter. It was what I did. And it was terrible. It was part of the reason why second edition and AD&D were difficult to access for many people because the rule was so goddamn complicated.
And it actually was the reason why we switched to, ironically, ICE, which I tell people, oh yeah, we switched from D&D to ICE system because it was easier, and people laugh because of course ICE is notorious for books and books and books of tables.
Oh yeah.
Which is complicated.
Yeah.
But you could just get through the fight.
Yeah, exactly. You could pace the energy of the interaction, and it's not a slog. Okay.
Right.
What's next? You're throwing your dagger. All right. Well, let's check this table and the to hit roll and the scatter roll and the blah 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 blah. No, that's wargaming, and that's okay. If you like wargaming, please engage in wargaming. It's hugely popular, but that's not what role-playing combat should be.
Right.
I remember in the D&D game where I was the Minotaur, we would role play like a week to 2 weeks within 1 hour of real time. And then we would have a combat that would take 2 hours, and the combat lasted maybe 5 minutes in game time.
Yeah.
And it was, especially because we had such a big party, and if we were in different places when the fight broke out, you might as well leave the house and go get a Taco Bell run if you're not in that combat, because you're not going to get in that combat fast enough that it matters.
Yep.
But I grew up more on GURPS in that my brother loved the original incarnation of it called Melee, which was just the strength, IQ, and actually it was just 2. It was strength and dexterity. They added IQ for wizards so they could cast spells, which was the second release. But it was made so we could each make like 5 to 10 dice and just beat each other up within an hour's time.
Mm-hmm.
And we would bust out my G.I. Joes and Star Wars characters and make up characters and use the living room as our battlefield and measure like 5 foot meters for the land speeder flying across, and we just had a blast. And then when GURPS came out, since it was a natural transition from Melee, my brother started leaning into that for running games. And then he's the one who got me into GURPS, and I stuck with it because I just really liked you could do GURPS Fantasy instead of D&D and not have to worry about FACO.
Do you know why GURPS was made to be so flexible?
I do not.
Steve Jackson, creator of GURPS and of course of Steve Jackson Games, loves time travel stories.
Oh yeah.
And he wanted to make a role-playing system where he could time travel, which meant he had to be able to do anything, anywhere. Or if he's going to hop dimensions, he wants to go to a dimension where magic works, he's got to have rules that will be universal, generic universal role-playing system rules that will go from genre to genre and from time period to time period. So that first book that came out was GURPS Fantasy, and it wasn't until, I don't know, 6 months in that he finally put out GURPS Time Travel and said, "Hey guys, here's why I did this. Here's what I did. This was the goal that I had in mind." The thing that always bothered me, that ultimately bothered me, as I blocked my camera, that ultimately bothered me about GURPS was that because it's a Steve Jackson product, it's his game, it's his world, it's his life, he was not open to suggestions about how to improve it. And so GURPS got too granular for me. And there were some things that I liked, but like the magic system I quite enjoyed. Every spell is a skill. But Black Ops, that's all I have to say. Black Ops. Hundreds upon hundreds of skills for one character to be a super character. No exaggeration about it. But the kind of thing where we had to go and find a program that would print out the characters for us, because writing a character by hand was like scribing the Gutenberg Bible. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
but Black Ops was such a great concept.
Yep, I think it was you that tipped me off to a website that had alternate ways to play the characters, and one of the ways was you just have a pool, a blank pool, and throughout the game, if players like, I know how to play the ukulele, and it's like, pull points out of your pool and write it down.
Yeah,
it's like you all along.
That was a guy that worked for SJ Games and ultimately left because of his disagreement with Steve Jackson. Mm-hmm. Steve eventually bent a little bit when he saw that the landscape was changing. Later editions of GURPS had what they called cinematic skills. So you could have the science skill, or you could have the science skill with an exclamation point at the end. And that just means you just know about science, everything from archaeology to zoology. That's the cinematic science skill. And so you don't have to list out every MFing skill that you have half a point in. You've just got a handful of points in science. So, and in that regard, GURPS
literally did A to Z on that one, by the way. My hat's off to you on that.
Thank you.
From archaeology to zoology.
That was on purpose.
GURPS
has gotten better.
My complaint with GURPS, and it's only a little complaint, was how many GURPS books kept coming out, and you don't need them all. You just get the ones you want. But I would always joke that there'd be like a GURPS Cobbler, which is a book dedicated to people making shoes, and then he did GURPS Vampire, and I'm like, well, when's Vampire going to do Vampire GURPS? And so it's and then they did what was the other one they recently did? They did another system, which was that system, but in the GURPS system. And so it's kind of the whole idea is you only need the basic book, and then you just make up everything else. It is a system and a game system that if you're going to get into it, you should be someone who can do a lot of your own house ruling. Because
it seems like when I got Prime Directive 4th, and it was GURPS setup, it's mostly just here's the universe of Prime Directive. And then, here are your skills that you can use also.
Yeah, because
for the most part,
hang on.
Sure thing. Yeah, the GURPS game that I run, like our last game that we did, the steampunk game, is only marginally what GURPS really is, because I altered the combat system because I want it to go fast, because I want to not make combat last forever, because we're not all there to play a miniature battles game. We're there to play a storytelling game.
Well, and that's the thing I think has shifted. Star Trek Adventures is extraordinarily cinematic. I mean, up to and including it's set up in scenes, and you open a scene and clear a scene, and in that scene, you can do X number of things from the pools, and they all refresh at the end of the scene. So, like your ability to shoot phasers and all that stuff, all that, and whether the good guys have initiative or the bad guys have initiative, shifts in the scene, which is fascinating and intriguing.
Yeah,
but it's very cinematic now. It's
Right.
Your dice are just totally a, oh, you want to try a thing, roll the dice. Okay, it failed, or it didn't fail, or maybe it closely failed, and so that just means that the bad guys have just got a little bit more oomph now. And I love that. I mean, it's much more about the GM's bad guy arena sort of thing, or could just be, it's Star Trek, so it could very much be and that's when the asteroid gets the extra threat and it's now rolling towards you faster, or whatever's the story, it's kind of cool.
That's what I found interesting too with the 5e is it's definitely a whole other creature than what I remember Dungeons and Dragons being, and it's much easier. And they definitely work on trying to make the combat flow faster.
Yeah.
And they, even when I was reading through it, the neat thing that I haven't seen in any other Dungeon and Dragon books I can remember was it was giving the characters, the players, I should say, agency to help with the storytelling aspect. Yeah. So like in the starting scenario, it says the players should talk about their character and their past and make that up. And the players can even decide with each other how they met, if they've met or know each other. And it was really good storytelling advice in the starter book. So if it is something, if you're looking into getting into role-playing games and you're interested in Dungeons & Dragons, the 5e starter set is a good way to do it. If you don't mind going online to build your character and follow that stuff, or just playing the preset characters, because they do come with two versions of this fighter, two versions of this wizard, and all the classic typical characters that you would see. But if you're really set on making your own character, for instance, my son wanted to play a kobold because that's who he played in the school game, and I was like, I don't think you can play a kobold, so I had to go online, and there is homebrewed rules for playing a kobold, so I let him make that. And sure. Then Tara's like, I don't really want to play anybody magical, but the group needs someone who can heal them. How about an herbalist? And I'm like, let me go to Google. And I looked it up, and there's rules for playing an herbalist. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely fun.
That's but calling back to our discussions about game mastering, one of the things that just recently happened to me while game mastering was my wife calling me to the carpet and saying, look, we're all experienced players. Let us take some of the burden, because I had been stressing myself out building the adventure and everything like that. And she's like, just pass it to us. Let us run with it for a while there. And I think that adds to what BDen was saying last time about agency when you're game mastering, is also being able to just hand the game over. And last week, for those of you who do watch Rocky Mountain Geek Tank, last week on the Star Trek Adventures, that's exactly what happened. I was game mastering, and I didn't say but like 4 words in like an hour and a half, because they were just firing on all cylinders. All the players were, and they were just passing stuff back and forth. And
you're turning into a robot on my end of things. I don't know if that's.
Yeah,
But
yep.
Yeah,
now he's doing it on purpose.
Yeah, your internet wrote a natural one.
My internet seems to be doing that quite a bit these days. I don't know what's going on, but every so often I get like, I don't know, maybe the buffer gets full. Yeah, stack collision with heap. So TLDR, 5e is actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I quite like 5e as much as I gushed about 3.5. Right. I played a 5e campaign. It was very enjoyable. The characters were fun to play. The classes were well done, and it was all around, like you said, much simpler. It's great for veterans who have been playing a while, and you can get the kind of depth that you want out of it. Or it's good for newbies who are just getting started and don't know how to do it, but want to learn. And it's perfect. It's not like GURPS.
Not like GURPS.
I had
So,
just
speaking of which, I do have one. I know we're running low on time. I do have one GURPS thing I wanted to show you if you guys are interested.
Oh, go ahead and show that. But I also wanted to leave time. You mentioned something about a Kickstarter that you were wanting to talk about too.
We can talk about that. Yeah, that's true.
We can go a little bit over. So go ahead and do the GURPS thing.
Okay.
And we'll do the Kickstarter.
So I only have a handful of GURPS books left. And the ones that I have are the ones that were really unique or interesting. Like GURPS is the only one that I've ever known that did a Lensman source book.
Mm-hmm.
So that classic sci-fi. So I still have my GURPS Lensman book. But one of the best books they ever did, and they actually won an award for it. If you find GURPS Cabal on a shelf, I don't know if they've put it out for 4th edition or not. They have this system is let me back up. This source book was basically monsters in the real world and magic in the real world, and it's hidden and you don't know that it's there, but it is there. And what they did was they took the actual magical systems of correlation and relationships. I was just looking at it here. Here we go. That were created by John Dee and Aleister Crowley, actual, if you want to say actual magicians in the world, and the rules of correlation that match them together, and they made it into a GURPS book. And so magic doesn't work in the real world, right? You can't do it. And in game terms, that's because we're in what's called a low mana world, which gives you a -20 to your skill. -20 means it's simply impossible to do. You can't do it. But if you follow the steps, and I'm not talking about real world, but if you follow the steps in the game world about the correlations and the connections that were created and put out by John Dee, the ancient court magician for Queen Elizabeth, and others, you can give yourself enough of a bonus to skill that suddenly magic in the role-playing game will work. And they made a quote-unquote real-life magic system work in a fantasy game book, and they actually won awards for it. This is the original Cabal book with the original Cabal cover. Later covers showed the awards that they won for the brilliance of this particular design. And I think I'm doing a bad job of explaining it, but if you know the system, what I said makes sense.
That's cool. I don't know if I have that one. I don't think I do.
It's worth getting, for sure.
There's a character concept I had that would fit in there perfectly. I always wanted to play a character that was extremely skilled with sleight of hand and magic, who actually also knew magic. Mm-hmm. But in order to keep people off his trail, he would always explain away his magic with the way that he could have done it with sleight of hand.
Yeah, and that would be perfect in GURPS Cabal. It would work really well.
So does you had a Kickstarter you're backing that
Kickstarter. So I have not been shy about the fact that I am a huge fan of Monte Cook games. Monte Cook was one of those people that worked on 3.0 and 3.5 back in the early 2000s, late 90s and early 2000s, and he is a genuine guru of game design. His current system that he is putting out is called the Cypher system. That's the one that I run every week on Sundays, and they have a new Kickstarter that is out. I can send you a link if you want, or you can just look it up. It's called Heroes of the Cypher System. And they keep putting out more and more amazing content for the Cypher system. Monte Cook does not need me. I should clarify. I'm not part of this. I'm a backer. I'm a huge fanboy. But I'm not benefiting from this anyway. There we go. Heroes of the Cypher system. And more content for the Cypher system is exactly what it needs. There are so many great books. There are fantasy books, of course. There are sci-fi. There's even hard sci-fi books. There's a book called The Stars Are Fire, which is all about hard science fiction, and I think you would really enjoy that, guy. In this one, this is in this most current Kickstarter is about superheroes, and they did a superhero book before, which was a campaign that I ran, Unmasked, and of course now they're doing real life heroes and first responders, but they're also adding 2 more superhero books, at least so far, 2 more superhero books. Claim the Sky is their main one, where supers are present in the world and have been for centuries, and everybody knows about them. But then there's another one called The Origin. And this one I'm really looking forward to, which is superpowers have just appeared, and it's still a secret, and not everybody knows, and there are organizations that are against the spread of superpowers, and it's all a secret conspiracy as to there it is, The Origin. In addition, I didn't realize this was on here. Your Best Game Ever is the best book on how to run and play in a role-playing game. I can't recommend it highly enough. It's absolutely worth getting. You can get a hardcover, or you can buy a PDF from their website, montycookgames.com. And despite my sounding like a salesperson here, I really don't work for them at all, nor do I make any money. I just think that this is the best system on the market right now.
Wow, cool. And if somebody from Monty Cook Games actually sees this, we wouldn't say no if you wanted to send us a copy to Roleplay on Show.
Right?
They might just do that. So,
but yeah, I'm a big fan of The Boys, the comic book and the TV show. So
mm-hmm.
I would like to find a group of players who would be interested in playing a really dark and horrible superhero world where it's rare that you have the superheroes that the players would be trying to stop all the other superheroes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was waiting for us to watch that together, and that just never.
Not going to happen. But
so
did you finish
all of it a couple of nights ago while I was working on model making, which I think has made my models disturbing.
Yes,
I've decided that.
Did you do a baby laser yet?
No, it wasn't Baby Laser. God, there was one in this season that I was like, oh my goodness, that was almost as funny as Baby Laser, and I can't remember what it was. We'll get back to it at some point. Because there was one where I was laughing, and I was like, this one's almost as good as Baby Laser. Oh my goodness.
Have you watched any of it yet, Dan?
I tried to watch the first episode, and it was too much for me.
Okay.
I don't blame you.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. And I'm curious about it because I love the superhero genre. Yeah, it was too much.
One of the
second season does a lot of interesting talking about current events in a unique and interesting way. I really like the way that they present.
I like this show so much that I've been thinking about trying to do a Troy's edit so Tara could see it, because I know she wouldn't watch it because it's too much for her. So some episodes would probably only be 5 minutes long. But a lot of the important stuff that happens doesn't necessarily include the gore in that. So cutting out the gore, I think there'd still be enough there that it would still be an interesting show. But it requires me to download it into a system I can edit first.
We were the second season got really close to my jump scare problem.
Mm-hmm.
I was having a real hard time with the newest super that they brought in, the Senator.
Well, I gave you a warning about that there were more of those. All of a sudden, something happens, jump scare kind of thing.
Jump scares, yeah, and it got to the point where I was feeling very tense. So this is a show that likes to push everyone's buttons. I've noticed, because it's pushing mine now, and I have a high gore tolerance. But it's
I had my buttons pushed as well.
Yeah,
I'm guessing it was with the entry situation into the superhero group.
Yes, very well done.
Yes,
in the book, it's worse.
I believe it.
So and I can say that I love all the changes they've made to the TV show from the book, which is rare. But they've really made the female characters much stronger in their storyline. Where in the comic book, it was borderline feeling like they were just set dressing. Like they're there for this plot point alone. And then they went past it, which I never looked at it that way until the TV show came out. And I was like, wow, they made some great choices with where they went with this.
Yeah, they I've read only a couple of the comics, but I've got to admit I like where the TV show went with it better.
In any case, we went 5 minutes over for my promo for The Boys.
Yay!
We're promoting all the cool things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, that's all right. I mean, it's all good. Brent's here. He's happy. So
he's got his love
sausage. That's it. The sausage scene. That's what he's talking about.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I'm good.
Second season, love sausage.
Oh.
Yep.
I don't want to know.
You don't.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's funny. That one was almost as good. Almost as good. Okay. Well, thank you for doing this. Next week we will be doing Act 3 of my 3-part gaming for Star Trek Adventures,
Nice.
and we'll be wrapping that up because they're at the real they're in Tilly now. So there you go. So
In Soviet Russia, chicken chokes you.
you're just not going to say nothing on that one. Okay, so that's all the time. With that, good night, nurse. That's all the time we've got for today. Thank you, BDan, for joining us
Thanks.
again.
No problem. It's always fun.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks here. And I've been Guy,
I've been Troy.
and this
And I've been Dan.
and you have, and this is Geek Town.